There is a particular kind of loneliness that arrives not in empty rooms, but in crowded ones. It is the loneliness of being surrounded by people who see you, but do not see you, who hear your words, but miss the meaning humming beneath them. Picture a room filled with laughter and conversation, warm light spilling across polished floors. And in the corner, someone stands by the window, watching rain trace patterns on the glass. Their reflection blurs with the water droplets, becoming something fluid, something not quite solid. This is the misfit soul, present in body but absent in spirit from the shared reality around them. We have all felt this distance at some point, that subtle but profound chasm between who we are and how we are perceived. The sinking feeling when you share something deeply personal, only to watch it land with a thud of misunderstanding. When your vulnerability is met with confusion, or worse, indifference. This pain of being misunderstood is not just social discomfort. It is an existential ache that questions the very possibility of true connection. If no one can truly see the landscape of your inner world, are you ever really known? Are you ever really here? The misfit soul carries this question like a secret weight. They learn to edit themselves, to translate their complex inner language into simpler terms that others can digest. They become masters of code switching, moving between the richness of their private thoughts and the flattened version they present to the world. But this translation comes at a cost. With each simplification, something essential is lost. The nuance, the depth, the particular texture of their being gets smoothed over into something more palatable, more ordinary. And so, the misfit learns to live with a quiet grief. The sorrow of knowing that the most authentic parts of themselves may never find a home in another's understanding. They become collectors of their own unspoken thoughts, curators of a museum no one else visits. What happens when the very qualities that make you unique, your depth, your sensitivity, your particular way of seeing, become the very reasons for your isolation? When your authenticity becomes your exile? This is the paradox of the misfit soul. To be most yourself is to be most alone. To speak your truth is to risk being unheard. To show your depth is to invite shallow interpretations. And so we arrive at the central question that haunts every misfit. Is being misunderstood the price of being real? Or is there another way to navigate this delicate dance between authenticity and connection? To understand the psychology of the misfit soul, we must first recognize that misunderstanding is not merely a failure of communication. It is a fundamental misalignment of worlds. Carl Jung's concept of individuation offers us a framework. Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming who we truly are, of integrating all aspects of our personality, both conscious and unconscious, into a cohesive whole. The self, in Jungian terms, is this complete, authentic person we are meant to become. But here lies the paradox. The journey toward individuation often requires us to diverge from collective norms. To become more ourselves, we must become less like others. And this divergence creates the very conditions for misunderstanding. Social psychology gives us another lens, the looking glass self. We form our identity based on how we believe others see us. But what happens when the reflection we receive is distorted? When others see only a fraction of who we are, or project their own expectations onto us? The misfit soul experiences a constant dissonance between their internal self-perception and the external feedback they receive. They know they are complex, nuanced, layered, but the world often treats them as simple, predictable, one-dimensional. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that arises when our beliefs about ourselves conflict with how we are perceived. The misfit knows they are deep, but the world treats them as shallow. They know they are sensitive, but the world calls them overly emotional. The pain of being misunderstood, then, is not just emotional, it is cognitive. It challenges our very sense of reality. If everyone sees you one way, but you experience yourself another way, which version is true? This is where the misfit soul faces a critical choice: conform to the external perception and betray their inner truth, or remain authentic and accept the loneliness that comes with being misunderstood. Most choose a middle path, developing what psychologists call a false self, a persona that navigates the social world while protecting the authentic self from further misunderstanding. But this protection comes at a cost. The false self requires constant maintenance. It demands energy to sustain. And over time, the distance between the false self and the authentic self can become a chasm of alienation. The misfit soul becomes a stranger to themselves, performing a version of who they are that feels increasingly hollow. They become experts at reading social cues, at anticipating what others want to see, at delivering the expected responses. But behind this performance, the authentic self waits in silence. It watches through a one-way mirror, observing the social dance but never truly participating. It becomes a ghost in its own life. This is the psychological setup of the misfit experience. A constant negotiation between authenticity and acceptance, between truth and belonging. A delicate balancing act on the tightrope between being seen and being understood. Let us dive deeper into the psychological landscape of the misfit soul. The experience of being misunderstood operates on multiple levels simultaneously: cognitive, emotional, and existential. At the cognitive level, we encounter what psychologists call confirmation bias. Once someone forms an initial impression of us, especially if that impression is that we are difficult to understand, they tend to interpret all subsequent information through that lens. Our complexity becomes evidence of our incomprehensibility. Our depth becomes proof of our inscrutability. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The more we try to explain ourselves, the more complex we appear. The more complex we appear, the more others retreat into simplified interpretations. And so the gap of understanding widens with each attempt to bridge it. Social comparison theory helps explain why this is so painful. Humans are wired to compare themselves to others. We look to our social environment to understand where we fit, what is normal, what is acceptable. But for the misfit, this comparison process constantly highlights their difference. They see others being understood with ease, forming connections effortlessly, while they struggle to be seen beyond surface level. This creates what psychologists call belonging uncertainty, the chronic doubt about whether one truly fits in a social context. Now let's consider the emotional dimension. Attachment theory teaches us that our earliest relationships shape our expectations of connection throughout life. When a child's emotional needs are consistently misunderstood or invalidated, they may develop what's called an anxious or avoidant attachment style. For the misfit soul, this early experience of being misunderstood can create a template for future relationships. They may approach connection with either desperate intensity, anxious attachment, or protective distance, avoidant attachment. Both strategies are attempts to manage the pain of potential misunderstanding. The misfit becomes hypervigilant to signs of misunderstanding. They develop what psychologists call rejection sensitivity, anticipating and overreacting to perceived signs of rejection or misunderstanding. A slight pause in conversation, a confused expression, a misinterpreted comment, all can trigger deep emotional pain. This sensitivity is not irrational. It is the accumulated wisdom of repeated experiences of being misunderstood. The misfit has learned that misunderstanding often precedes rejection, dismissal, or invalidation. Existential psychology offers another layer of understanding. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy emphasizes that meaning-making is central to human psychology. We need to feel that our lives have purpose, that our experiences matter, that we are part of something larger than ourselves. But when we are consistently misunderstood, this meaning-making process is disrupted. If others cannot understand our inner world, how can they validate our experiences? How can they bear witness to our journey? How can they help us make sense of our lives? The misfit soul becomes the sole author of their story, without editors or readers. They must find meaning in isolation, without the mirror of others' understanding to reflect back their significance. This is why the pain of being misunderstood is so profound. It strikes at our fundamental human needs: the need to be seen, the need to belong, the need for our experiences to matter to others. The misfit learns to satisfy these needs internally. They become their own witness, their own validator, their own source of meaning. But this self-sufficiency, while necessary for survival, can deepen the sense of isolation. They become islands of understanding in a sea of misinterpretation. And while islands can be beautiful, self-contained ecosystems, they are still separated from the mainland by vast stretches of water. The psychological exploration of the misfit soul reveals a complex interplay of cognitive processes, emotional patterns, and existential concerns. It shows us that being misunderstood is not a simple social problem, but a multifaceted psychological experience that shapes how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we find meaning in our lives. As we sit with these psychological insights, something begins to shift. The pain of being misunderstood starts to reveal its hidden dimensions. What if this experience, for all its difficulty, contains within it the seeds of profound self-knowledge? Consider the misfit's journey not as a failure to connect, but as an accelerated path towards self-awareness. When external validation is unreliable, when others' understanding is inconsistent, we are forced to look inward. We become the primary witnesses to our own lives. This inward turn, while born of necessity, can become a source of strength. The misfit develops what psychologists call internal locus of control, the belief that they are the primary agents of their own lives, rather than being controlled by external circumstances. They learn to trust their own perceptions, even when others question them. They develop what Carl Rogers called unconditional positive self-regard, the ability to value themselves regardless of external validation. This is not to romanticize the pain of being misunderstood. The loneliness is real. The ache for connection is genuine. But within this experience lies an opportunity for what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, positive psychological change experienced as a result of adversity. The misfit soul, through their experience of being misunderstood, often develops exceptional empathy. Having known what it feels like to be unseen, they become particularly attuned to seeing others. They notice the subtle shifts in expression, the unspoken emotions, the hidden depths in people that others might overlook. They become what psychologist Elaine Aron calls highly sensitive persons. individuals with deeper cognitive processing of emotional and sensory information. Their sensitivity, once a source of pain, becomes a source of perception. There is also a quiet wisdom that emerges from being misunderstood. The misfit learns that not all truths need to be spoken, not all depths need to be revealed. They understand that some aspects of the self are too precious, too vulnerable to risk misunderstanding. This discernment becomes a form of self-protection and self-respect. The misfit learns to share their inner world selectively with those who have earned the privilege of understanding them. The reflection phase brings us to a crucial realization. Being misunderstood is not necessarily a reflection of our worth or our ability to connect. It is often a reflection of the limitations of others' perception, the constraints of social norms, or the simple fact that some experiences are inherently difficult to translate. The misfit soul begins to understand that their depth is not a flaw to be corrected, but a quality to be honored. Their complexity is not a problem to be solved, but a richness to be appreciated. This shift in perspective is what psychologists call cognitive reframing, changing the way we interpret an experience to find more adaptive meaning. The misfit learns to reframe their experience from one of rejection to one of selectivity. They are not failing to connect. They are waiting for connections worthy of their depth. They are not being rejected. They are discerning who deserves access to their inner world. This reflection brings a quiet dignity to the misfit's journey. The pain remains, but it is no longer shameful. It becomes the evidence of their depth, the marker of their authenticity, the price of their unique perspective on the world. In the quiet space that follows reflection, a new understanding begins to emerge. The misfit soul's journey is not toward being understood by everyone, but toward understanding themselves completely. The resolution is not found in changing who we are to fit others' understanding, but in embracing the beautiful, necessary solitude that comes with authenticity. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he might have added that this privilege often requires the courage to be misunderstood along the way. The path to individuation is necessarily solitary in stretches, for we must leave the well-trodden paths of collective understanding to discover our own unique way. The misfit soul learns that some aspects of the self are too vast, too complex, too particular to be fully contained in language or understood by others. These are the territories of the soul that remain private sanctuaries, known only to the self. And this is not failure, this is wisdom. The understanding that complete transparency is neither possible nor desirable. That mystery is an essential quality of depth, that some things lose their magic when explained. The resolution brings a shift from seeking external validation to cultivating internal sovereignty. The misfit becomes the final authority on their own experience, the curator of their own inner world, the guardian of their own truth. This does not mean abandoning the desire for connection. Rather, it means redefining what connection means. It means seeking not universal understanding, but specific resonance. Not being seen by everyone, but being deeply seen by a few. The misfit learns to recognize their tribe not by similarity, but by depth of perception. They find those rare souls who understand that understanding is not about agreement, but about appreciation. Not about comprehension, but about respect for mystery. In this resolution, the pain of being misunderstood transforms from a wound to a compass. It points toward what matters most, not being universally understood, but being authentically yourself. Not fitting in everywhere, but belonging deeply to yourself. The misfit soul discovers that their perceived flaw, their difficulty being understood, is actually their greatest gift. It is the evidence of their depth, the marker of their uniqueness, the signature of their particular way of being in the world. And so, the journey ends not with the elimination of misunderstanding, but with the integration of it. The misfit makes peace with the fact that some parts of them will always remain mysterious to others, and they learn to cherish this mystery as the sacred ground of their individuality. They understand now that being misunderstood was never the problem. The problem was believing they needed to be understood to be valid. The resolution is realizing that their validity comes from within, from their own unwavering commitment to authenticity. The misfit soul stands finally at home in their own skin, no longer waiting for external permission to exist fully. They have become the understanding they once sought from others. And in this self-understanding, they find the only connection that was ever necessary, the connection to their own true self.